All right, well, we are working on the pattern for the wheel head collar from the Quorn today, and I'm developing the pattern for it, and I'm just getting started on it, so we'll take you along and build it. I've got a couple of pieces of 2x4 that I've got glued up, so they'll have to cure, and then they'll go to the lathe, and I'll turn them to diameter, which I probably won't show, but then as we start assembling, I'll bring you back. I've got part of the pieces cut for it and everything. This is the original wheel head collar pattern that I had built when I built my original Quorn. And this is built as a one-piece pattern. And I contemplated when I was going to do this pattern, if I was going to do it as a split pattern or as a one-piece pattern. And my original thought was I was going to do a split pattern, and they're a little bit easier for me to mold for one-offs than ramming up a odd side for it and then going back and redoing it. But for a one-off, why, I'm going to turn it just like, or I'm going to build it just like this one, except we'll do it in the grown-up Quorn, which is, if you haven't been following along, it's a third bigger, 33% is what I've scaled it up to. And there's some compromises along the way. Now, I did just cast the spindle housing, or the wheel head bracket, I guess is what they call it, yesterday or the day before, I think. And this is going to be a usable casting. I thought you might like to see the size comparison between the original and the other pattern and the differences between them. Now, this is a 3D printed pattern that I used to cast this casting for the grown-up Quorn, and I 3D printed it as a split pattern, and I made the decision not to build a core box for it. Maybe that was a good decision, maybe it wasn't. I've got some extra machining to do, but there again, as I said before, it's a one-off thing, so I don't think it's that big a deal. If I was doing it again, now that I've looked at my original pattern, I probably would have built a core box for it and cast it up different. So this was the original pattern, and it was built as a split pattern, and then it's designed for a core box. And I didn't find my core box to show it. It's sitting back there, I'm sure, but I didn't take the time to dig it out. But this is my original ugly old pattern, and it's just a wood built up pattern. And that's what I'm doing on this wheel head collar, is I'm going to just build it out of wood. You know, I could have 3D printed it. I'd gotten around and redrawn it, but I hadn't put it in CAD yet, so I've actually, the drawing's not even complete. I didn't do the third view of it, but for what this is, why, I'm not going to worry about it at this point in time. There again, we're talking one-off parts. So anyway, this was the original, and of course this is it from the end. And when we compare it to the grown-up, there's the difference in them. You know, we've got a substantial amount of difference all the way around on them. But that's what they look like. There's the difference. In the originals, I cast the boss this way so that I could cast it this way. So that was the way it was originally cast. Whereas this one, I cast it in this orientation. So this was probably easier, but I would have had a core box for it to support it fully, and still be able to get it out of the sand. And I think it was probably originally cast in probably this orientation. Let's see. Yeah, I would have cast it in this orientation. The reason being, the core would have been substantial enough, and it extends on up into this area too, because this is hollowed out underneath here. There's an adjustment there on both sides. So with it cast in this orientation, the core would have been big enough, it would have supported this area up on top. Where if I would have done it this way, I probably wouldn't have even needed the extra support of the core on this side for the most part. But what would have happened is there wasn't enough material down underneath, or enough surface area to support the core fully. So it would have not set there really well. So I'm sure it was cast in this orientation when I originally did it. So that's the differences between them. You know, like I say, if I was going to do it again, I would probably do it this way. There would be less machining all the way around, and it's not just the cavity inside, but on the new one, I'm going to have to machine out this portion here and cut my bosses. Whereas where it was originally cast like this, why it would have pulled in that direction, and we would have already had those forms. So the only real machining that would have been done on the exterior of it is I would have had to cut out the insides where these bosses go, because I set it that way to draw. So there's the differences there. thought you might find it interesting. Now, differences in size between the grown-up and this little one, and this is pretty much to scale. This would be the original one, and this is the grown-up here. Let's see if that'll show. Where are we at here? There we are, just like that. So there's the differences in size. Well, where are we? You know, there's quite a bit of difference there. Anyway, once we get the new pattern built, well, it'll be easier to see. The original wheel head here would have had a 1.25 inch bore going down through it, because it mounts in this orientation, and the wheel head assembly goes in just like that. So it sits in there, and this is our main column, comes up through here. We've got pivot adjustment up and down. That's the way it would set. The original was, as I said, 1.25 inch bore going down through. When I scaled it up, I think it ends up being 1 5/8 inches. I went ahead and upped that to 1 3/4 shaft. So there'll be an 1 3/4 shaft. I've got to order material for that and the bed rails yet. I'll get those ordered here in the next week or so. I'm not in a big hurry, but then we're going to turn the spiral on that column, and I'll use the same setup. And I think I've still got all the pieces for my crude little setup to turn that spiral on the mill. So that'll be coming up. We'll do that. I've got the base castings done. I've got the, what else do we have done? Out of our little drawings here, we have the wheel head collar, which we're working on now. We have the work head, which is scaled up. Our two main bars going through, they were originally 1 inch on the original Quorn. I'm using 1 1/4 inch, I believe, is what that scaled out to be. And I think that's actually a little bit underside. Here's the drawings for the tilting bracket. We've got that drawing done. We've already finished the rocking lever. That casting's done. We did it here a while back. And then we have base castings are done. Both base castings, they've been cast. And then there's a drawing for the wheel head bracket right there. So I haven't picked a motor yet. You know, we're going to pick something along the same design as what's on my Mark II right now on the standard Quorn, except we'll up the scale on that, both in size and in power. We'll get a little more out of it, since we're gonna we want that extra versatility. Main bed bars, the upright is, I think, in its original configuration right now, they're not quite 12 inches high. We'll probably up that to 16 inches, is I would imagine what I'll do. Maybe 18, but probably 16. I think when you do the math and scale at 33%, it comes out 14 something. And sorry, you folks that deal in metrics are going to have to convert that yourself. And bed length wise, the longer bed bar is 13. I think that works out to be 17 or something. We'll probably have 18-inch bed bars, 18 to 20, it'll depend. I want a little more length, both to take up for the scale, and I think it could be a little bit longer anyway. The Quorn, the original Quorn, works fine with that bed length. You've actually got about 9 inches of working space between the two base castings. I think that's a little short. You know, I'd like to see at least 12 inches of usable. We'll probably go maybe only 16, but probably closer to 18 inches. Like I say, I think it's 17 point something is what, when you do the math and scale it up. So we'll probably go 18. I'll order enough material. I'll probably order a 36-inch stick of material, and then we'll cut it accordingly as to what we think we want, because the front bed rail is a little bit shorter than the back bed rail, so we'll adjust those to match. And I guess that's about all I got for you until we start assembling this pattern. So I'll let this glue dry and go ahead and turn the round portion with the core section sticking out the end. Now on the base castings, I didn't core them, got some shrinkage there. The castings are so massive anyway for the size of the machine that I'm not going to worry about it. Most of my shrinkage will machine away when I install the bed bars. And the rocking lever, I didn't bother to put a core in it. That was printed for having a steel core put in it, or I had actually intended to put a steel core in there and just press it out, but I went ahead and cast that without a core. We'll just bore that to match. I didn't feel like that was that big a deal. You know, we'll set it up on the mill and take care of that. So that's kind of where we're at. With it grown up to the size that it is, I think we will probably use 5C collets on it, is what we'll set up the head with. You know, there's lots of opinions about what they should be, and guys are using ER collets and things like that. I think for my use, for what I want on it, and since I'm set up to use 5C stuff anyway, well, we'll put a 5C size wheel head on it. That is, actually Martin Models offered a 5C collet for a tool holder for the standard Quorn. I contemplated doing something like that on the smaller Quorn. I think it's a little bit, I think it's not quite as appearance-wise, it's a little bit too big, I think, I guess is the main problem that I have with that. But anyway, nonetheless, we've still got several castings to do, several patterns to make for it and everything, and we'll just do them as we go along. All right, let's see if we can't get a little bit done before it gets too hot. It's starting to warm up again here today, and it's smoky as hell outside. I think the state must be still burning down. So, which, yeah, anyway. So, here's our wheel head collar. Here's our standard one. This is the turned boss for the larger one. And there you can kind of see the difference in size of it. 2 5/8 diameter, I believe, on this one, approximately. It doesn't, you know, it's not that critical. We're going to have an 1 3/4 inch bore through it. So I left bosses here to put a core in it. It's about 1 1/4 inch core. You know, it's not, there again, one-off. We're not doing production items. So it doesn't matter as long as I've got a hole through it. It's just so I'm pouring a little bit less aluminum, you know, and not having to completely machine out all the inside. So that'll give me some sort of a core where I'm using green sand cores in these. Why, that works plenty well for this. The turning here in the center is just a reference mark. It just shows me where center is. Means nothing. And this will get a coat of probably body filler and any imperfections once it's all assembled. And then we'll go ahead and paint this one up. Now this was made out of just a couple of pieces of 2x4 that I'd smoothed out on the edges that mattered, and then cut them off. This is chucked up on the metal lathe. I didn't even bother to set up the wood lathe for this one. And when I did this, I just drilled a couple of 1/4 inch holes and put some 1/4 inch dowels in crossways, just to give it a little more reinforcement. So I've gone ahead, this will get a couple of good coats of finish. Now if I would have done this as a split pattern, and we may do one or two of these parts as split patterns just to demonstrate the technique with it. Normally I will drill them for dowels anyway as index points, but I won't drill all the way through. We'll just drill down into the second one a little bit, and then we can protrude our 1/4 inch pins and bevel the edges and for alignment for the 2 halves. So we'll do that at some point. Now I've gone ahead and semi-formed some of the, at least 2 of the dowels or 2 of the dowel pieces that go on here. This will, as we're looking at it, I'm looking at the front of the machine. Motor will mount over here. This is our spindle, runs through here. And what I've done is I've made my pattern to pretty much fit this pattern, because any shrinkage that we get will be the same whether it's in this piece or this piece. So this will sit in here about like that, and there's a pivot point here. So we've got, and that's what these points are here, is they'll get drilled and tapped on the outside, and the pivots that go in there is, I think these are probably a 3/8, and there'll be bosses that correspond on both sides of this, and I've already initially laid them out. I've got an index line here, which is going to be the top of my little boss, and then a mark to show, and I've got that on both sides. So we're going to glue up the first one just with some super glue, and then we'll match up the other one. And there again, these dowels are not perfect. They're a piece of 3/4 inch dowel that we beveled to pretty well match on this on this position right there. They'll get super glued in the center just like that. And that'll be the boss. Now, once these are all glued up, they'll probably be a little bit too big to actually fit down into that pattern, because I'll sand them down so I've got a little bit of draft and let them protrude, and then we'll machine them off when we get to that point. So if we set these up, it'll be just like that is the way they'll glue on there. I'm going to say that looks pretty good right there. Those are going to be our two side bosses. They're again not rocket science. This pivot assembly on the top, we'll set up here like this with our two index bosses here, and then we've got our clamping position on the back side, which is this one right here. And all we're going to do is reference it off of the two bosses that we've already installed. We'll put that in place while we're right here. So that's the way it's going to look. Be split all the way down through. We'll have a clamping bolt there. Now there's talk, a lot of guys are saying you're better off with a split cotter. And in some instances, maybe you're right. What I've discovered is over time, split cotters, if you use them a tremendous amount, tend to start sticking on you a little bit, which these standard squeeze, you know, a pinch bolt can do the same thing. But you know, sometimes you need a little bit bigger boss if you're going to put a split cotter in, and sometimes they can take up a little more room. So as far as I know, on at least the most of these parts, well, I'm going to go ahead and put a slotted clamping bolt on them, just like was originally on them, and I'm perfectly happy with that. So there's the way these two will look, just like that. And now what we'll do is we'll cut us a piece of probably about 3/8 inch stock to go across between those, and that will be one side of them. And then actually we might not, we might run our piece down through here first and do that, and then we'll go back and put in our reinforcements on the side. So I'll go cut some material and we'll come back and take a look at it. Well, you just kind of get in a zone as you're cobbling this stuff together and cutting and fitting, and you stop filming. You don't take the time not to do it. So anyway, all I've gotten a fix so far is I've just got my little top piece here, my dowel on top. Now all this stuff will get filled and sanded, so I'm not concerned about finishes beyond that. Okay, so I've got my two little side supports that go on, and they're going to mount on here just like that on both sides. And there again, they'll get filled. This is kind of like tack welding here. You put it in place, and I'm just super gluing it on. You know, years past I would have used wood glue on them, but now we're just super gluing them in place. And actually the filler that I'm going to use, and I just use a body filler on these. I do use some, some of the, what is it? A little bit of the Durham's water putty, but normally I just go to a automotive body filler is what I put on 90% of mine. It's quick and easy. I've got set up to do it pretty quick. So I'm going to go ahead and just super glue these in place, and after they've set and cured, well, I will mix some body filler and fill them up and get the first coat of filler on. Well, this is our very crude initial mounting bracket. Now, over the course of the rest of the day, why this is going to get, I'm going to guess at least 4 coats of filler on it and get sanded in between coats. And then we'll be ready. Hopefully by the end of the day we can get a couple of coats of paint on it, so maybe tomorrow we can do a casting of this. So anyway, that's the way it looks. We've got all our braces in here. This is kind of like you're building something up from just a rough form type of thing. So now I'm going to go back, and initially it'll just get a rough coating of filler in all it'll get in my cutouts here, and we'll start doing fillets around everything. I'll concentrate on this upper area here especially because I want to get that filler in there to help support these pieces, just in case something were to let go. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead, run some filler on this first coat, and then we'll go from there. Okay, there's after the first coat. We'll let that sit and cure a little bit. I'll clean up my mess, and when I come back I'll sand it down a little bit and we'll throw another coat on there. So I mixed this awful light with hardener, so it'll take probably another 5 minutes to cure up to where we can really start working it a little bit. Normally when it's hot like this, why it sets up before you get a chance to really do anything. So yeah, coming along, coming along. A little bit of sandable primer here. Going to be quick and easy. Here is our pattern to this point. Got pretty much all the body filler we're going to put on, unless something jumps out at me. But we're going to spray some primer filler on it and build a few coats of that. We'll sand in between coats, get the imperfections out, and then we'll go back with a top coat of just whatever color I grab the can of. Doesn't really matter. So that's where we're at. I'll go and spray a couple of coats on this and we'll take a look at it again. Well, here's where we're at for right now. Now this is going to cure the rest of the day, and then in the morning I'll sand it out. It'll be dried. I've got it pretty heavy with a primer surfacer on there, so we still got a little bit of grain showing through in some places, but we'll probably, well, I'll leave it set until in the morning, and then I'll sand it out and make sure it's good and cured, and then it may need another coat. Otherwise we'll top coat it. So I may be able to cast this tomorrow. It'll probably be Sunday before I fire up the furnace. I've got a couple of other things that I want to cast at the same time. So anyway, there it is. I still got to build a core box, or make sure I've got a core box that'll fit it. What I've done is set up several little round pieces and different core boxes to turn either halves or full rounds, just like the last one I did for the core in the last bracket that I cast up. But there, when we look at them side by side, why, there's the difference in size. That's what a third more gives you. So anyway, that pattern will work out fine, I think. From the looks of it, it looks pretty good once I get it smoothed out. So anyway, hopefully you find that a little bit interesting. Comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. If you have not hit that subscribe button and you find this interesting, I'd appreciate it. And hit the bell notification. You'll know when I put out a new video. As I said before, comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.